What's going on, guys? My name is Mike Diesel. I'm one of the operators of Dank Wheelie, and we have our stunt bike today. And I want to go ahead and give you guys a history and a little bit of tour as far as how the stunt bike's set up. So what it is a 2003-2004 generation Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R. It's arguably one of the most popular bikes that people like to use to convert over to a stunt bike. And I wanted to go ahead and give you guys a little detail about the parts that we use and the reason why people like this bike so much. So I bought this bike about a year ago, bought it bone stock, and from there I went ahead and pieced together a bunch of parts. With stunt bikes, the two things that you mainly want to cover on a stunt bike is making sure that it's protected with crashes. So you have these cages right here, and then also you want to make sure that it has the right gearing. So when you're doing a lot of slow speed stunts in parking lots, you're going to want to use a lot of torque in your bike's gearing. So that means these bikes with these really small sprockets, you convert over to big sprockets. Myself personally, a big thing that I think is very important with your stunt bike is your handlebars. The way that you have your levers angled, the way that the handlebars are centered. Just depending on your size of the rider itself, you want to make sure that it fits your needs exactly, and you don't have to worry about being uncomfortable on your bike. So the biggest thing is just making sure that every part that you put on this bike is to your needs, and like I said, making sure that it's ready for crashing. So getting into detail with the parts, I have a back sub cage. These back sub cages are great because they have great posture whenever you're up in a wheelie. Sometimes with the stock pegs, they're too low or too high. So when you're up in a wheelie, it feels very uncomfortable and you can't get your legs to stretch how you'd like. But they're also all chewed up, as you can see. This is all Delrin, this entire puck. It's made by Righteous Stunt Metal. And this entire puck gets shaved down over time as you crash on it, but it protects your back half of your bike, this beautifully wrapped tail. So right up front, you have the same. It's a crash cage, and these are actually shock absorbing. So when you crash the bike, it actually takes the blow and ricochets it off the ground. So it's supposed to reduce the impact a lot. Every cage is gonna have some kind of puck setup. Not only is that good for not smashing on bare metal and ruining the integrity of the frame, it absorbs the crash a lot easier, but it also allows your bike to slide versus coming to a complete stop and smashing into the ground. So myself, little tricks that I like to tell people, if you have regular pegs, you can go ahead and shave these pegs down. That way if you hit the ground, the pegs are shaved down enough to where the clearance doesn't snap the peg completely off the rear set. It just drops right down there. Myself, I use a Righteous Stunt Metal low exhaust can, and the reason I like using that exhaust is because it's very out of the way. My legs don't kick it. Whenever I crash the bike, I'm not scratching up my exhaust, because if you had a traditional side mount like the original exhaust that comes with this bike, you're ending up scratching up the tail from scraping or just messing up the side. Nobody likes a dented up can. So looking at the bike as a whole, it might look kind of like a ratty bike to people that might not be in the stunt scene, but myself personally, this bike has been up and down. I've broken the frame, so we've upgraded it from a stock aluminum frame to a badass steel frame. The brand is Badass Industries, and they take steel tubing and create a front structure, and then they bolt it together from a stock original back half, because this stock back half is very strong. It's the front half that's hollow aluminum that's going to tend to break in half, and it breaks the bike down over time. Even if you're not breaking it instantaneously, over time these aluminum welds are going to go. So one of the things, getting back to the beginning, while I was telling you guys this is one of the most popular stunt bikes people choose, it's because the motor, the electrical system on this bike is super easy and friendly to work on, and I can tear this bike down and put it back together within 4 hours, just by how simple it is once you tear it down one time. So on top of it being a simple bike, the power is right where you want it. It's 636 cc's, which means it's slightly more power than your traditional 600 cc, but it's a super sport bike, so that means that when you want the power, it's always there. You take a stock about a 45 tooth stock sprocket, and then you add 16 teeth to that, and you go ahead and get to 61 teeth. That's gonna give you tons of torque on this bike, so the power as stock is relatively instantaneous, but when you add way more torque to it, it's gonna make this bike a complete monster. So the only downside with this bike that people tend to have is, like I said earlier, you have your frame and it rips in half, so you have to worry about that. But once you go ahead and get a solid support system with your crash cage and your front and rear, your scrape bar for your tail, and most importantly, getting frame support, like a brand new steel frame. This bike's relatively indestructible, and the motor on it is it's a 15-year-old motor, so it's by no means new technology, but it's simple technology. It works, and I've rode practically all generations of the ZX6R, and this is probably my most favorite ZX6R, hands down. Although my 19, I love that thing. I just refuse to stunt it out. So other than that, guys, the majority of it, it's a couple of crash parts here and there. Couple main things I'll emphasize over and over and over again. You want to make sure your stunt bike is crash ready. A lot of people put one cage on, they don't cover the rear, and they just destroy one thing or the other. But 360 all around, this bike is covered in crash protection parts, and that saves your wallet and it saves your body over time when you come with a bike ready to ride. So the main things you cover when you get a bone stock bike: crash protection, bigger gearing for more torque, and the third most important part is lots of brakes. Because when you get tons of power on a bike and you're doing very tight-knit stunts in parking lots such as this big parking garage, the main thing that you want to be able to do is stop. And when you stop, you want to make sure that your brakes are exactly what you expect when you're using them. So what I go ahead and do, I take the stock rotor, throw it away, and I get a front rotor sized rotor, and you convert it over to the rear. So when you have a front sized rotor, you have plenty of space to put multiple calipers on, and that's exactly what I did. I doubled the braking power for the foot brake. I'm still using a Brembo foot brake, which is relatively familiar with a lot of normal bikes that use these foot brakes, but it's tons of foot brake, obviously having steel braided lines. And then this special caliper runs all the way up to your handbrake. So not every stunt bike needs a handbrake, but I personally use a handbrake with a lot of my different tricks, and it's very debatable whether or not a handbrake is a true needed thing for a stunt bike. So that's about it. So the color and everything else with the bike, I've done multiple color schemes with my bike, but this black and gold scheme is by far my favorite and everyone else's favorite. And I went ahead and had this helmet for about 6 months now, and honestly, that's about how long I've had the color scheme on the bike. And I can't like change it. I'm just stuck on this color scheme. So the bike might look flashy and everything else, but with a nice camera like this, you guys are most likely going to see a ton of scratches and everything else. But that's the reason that we do these crazy color schemes and everything else, because you don't really pay attention to a bike with all these crazy colors. You just kind of see the gist of it. And at the end of the day, building your stunt bike, it doesn't have to be the prettiest thing ever. This thing's a workhorse. She looks beautiful to me, but at the end of the day, she does exactly what I need. And it's iconic. It's about being personalized with your machine. It's all about showing your creativity and your individuality whenever you build a stunt bike. And there's plenty of other nicer bikes out there, but being one with your bike is the main thing that's gonna make you achieve all the goals that you're looking for on this. Alrighty guys, so that's gonna wrap up today. I hope you guys learned something about the ZX6R stunt bike. This is mine. There are many stunt bikes out there, but this is my individual beauty. But we call her Betty White. If you'd like to see me and Betty White out on YouTube and checking out all the different stunts that we're performing, check me out on Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere else. My channel is Dank Wheelie, and keep it dank.